Yeah. Thank you so much, Annie. Thank you all for being here. I was just telling Annie that the more connected I feel to an audience, the more nervous I am, because the more I want to be of service to you. It is, therefore, a great honor that I feel to be here, and I'm trying to pack a lot into this talk. I'd like to start, though, with a line that I stole from D. Hock, which just seems to sort of get at it. He writes, "It is far too late, and things are far too bad for pessimism." And that's how I feel. That's how I feel. We can't waste time with that. So here is where I begin. It is not massive, needless hunger. It is not climate chaos. It is not terrorism that is the crisis. The only crisis that we have to worry about is people's feelings of powerlessness to address these crises. That is the only thing we have to focus on, in my view. Because solutions, as you know, solutions are known to each of these problems. Solutions are known. Hunger. We now are predicting 150 million more people just over the last 2 years period going hungry, and yet we've had bumper harvests. We have more than enough food in the world to feed us all. And we know now that organic agriculture, there was a wonderful new study at the University of Michigan. We know that based on that study, interdisciplinary, scholarly study, that if the whole planet went organic, we could actually increase food availability by 50%. Solutions are known. If we talk about the energy crisis, we know that the global climate crisis, we know that if you take Amory Levin's estimates and even double them, that with a modest investment of 30 or so billion dollars a year, it's modest relative to what we're now faced with this financial crisis, that in 10 years we could be off fossil fuels. We know how to end poverty. In my generation, the 1960s, in 1 decade, we cut the rate of poverty in half in this country. We know how to do it. So, my case is that the problems aren't the crisis. The crisis is only people's feeling of powerlessness to address these crises. So that's what we have to focus on like a laser. This is the question then. What could be powerful enough, possibly be powerful enough, to have this really smart species creating as societies a world that as individuals none of us would choose, not one of us would choose. Whether you would be in an audience like this or anyone on street of any place in this planet, nobody would say, yes, I think we should heat the planet and wipe out species and make people starve needlessly. So, what could be powerful enough to have us creating this world that we as individuals live for? Well, I don't think it's George Bush. And I don't think it's that guy in the cave somewhere in Afghanistan or Pakistan. I think there's only one thing powerful enough, and that is the power of ideas. The power of ideas. That this is the great virtue and the great Achilles heel of our species, that we are creatures of the mind. We each see the world through filters. We see the world according to the ideas that we hold, that tell us what is our nature, what is the nature of nature, and therefore what is possible. We call it, my daughter and I, in our book Hope's Edge, we call it our mental map. That's just who we are. And increasingly scientists are telling us exactly that. There is no unfiltered reality for a human being. So, it's okay. It's okay if our mental maps are life-serving. But I'm arguing with you this morning, or I'm offering an hypothesis this morning, that the dominant mental map, the one that we absorb like an invisible ether in this culture, is taking us down. It's fundamentally anti-life. And I'm going to try to briefly summarize that before I get into the real heart of my talk. this mental map starts with, well, this mental map, let me say first of all, the way I visualize it in my little book, I begin with a graphic. If you pull out the front cover, you'll see this graphic. The mental map is a spiral of powerlessness coming from the dominant mechanical worldview. And this spiral of powerlessness begins with a single premise, begins with the premise of not enough, the premise of lack. There's not enough of anything, right? There's not enough energy. There's not enough food. There's not enough love. There's not enough parking places in Boston where there's not enough. The premise of lack. There's not enough goods, that sort of stuff, and there's not enough goodness, meaning that we believe that we lack what it takes. We lack the qualities, the virtues, the values that it takes. We're not good enough to meet this crisis, to meet this challenge. So the lack of goods and goodness is at the center of the spiral of powerlessness, because if we truly believe in this premise of lack of goods and goodness, then we're led to think that we do have to find somebody else to figure it out. We do have to turn over our fate to some impersonal force, bigger than ourselves, some infallible force. Ronald Reagan called it the magic of the market. Now, unfortunately, it's not magical. Unfortunately, it's based on one rule. As we know, the market, and you all are involved in the market, it's a glorious thing within a democracy, within democratic values. But left to its own devices, what we have come up to with in our culture, what we kind of accept as a norm, is that one rule can create a viable market. Our economy driven by one rule, highest return to existing wealth, people who own the shares in companies. One rule economics then leads inevitably to an increasing concentration of wealth, so that we have today, we have reached the point where one family controls as much as 40% of the U.S. population. Do you know who that family is? Yes, the Waltons. So we reach the point then that we all should have learned as kids when we played Monopoly, that, that at the end of the night, when you finally got to go to bed, it's because one person had all the property. And I have to say, as a kid, I was kind of relieved, even though my brother usually won, because it meant I could go to bed. In a game, that's okay. In real life, it's not okay. It's not okay. It means death. So this spiral of powerlessness starts with the premise of lack, ends up then with creating such concentrated power that it does then appear to be that everybody is these selfish little critters who don't have enough goodness in them, and we can say, see, look what human beings have done. They have to be necessarily these selfish little materialists out to get their stuff, or they wouldn't have created this monstrous situation